But hey, look, thanks for joining me. Obviously, it's nice to have someone who's well recognized in both the Microsoft and Power Apps community here with me. But yeah, look, obviously, thanks for joining me on the call today. What we'll do is, just to give a brief agenda, we'll be going through a bit of an introduction to ourselves. Speaking about Power Apps and the Power community and Power platform. Of course, you can introduce yourself and Lowcodera, which I'm really interested to hear about. So yeah, I mean, you know me quite well. My name's Hashim. I'm one of the business managers here at Darwin. For the past 8 years, I've been managing our Swiss division, fundamentally helping businesses of all sizes in all sectors recruit within the data science, data engineering, Microsoft markets, as well as the embedded community, Java, ventured into blockchain also. So we're also starting to look at mechatronics as a business, and we pretty much cover everything IT and tech related. So that's a little bit about me. Of course, recently I've ventured into the Power Apps and Power Platform market. It's something which has caught my eye for a few years now. Working with some really interesting companies in the space in Switzerland who are approaching me with a lot of demand, which is really interesting, and it's really fun to see sort of what this space is going to bring. And you know, when I found out about Lowcodera, I was really interested in sort of finding out what you guys do within the space as well.
Great. I didn't realize you did so much across the board. It's very exciting to hear all that. So I'm Rahan Arif. I'm based here in London. I'd say first and foremost, for the last 15 years, I'd class myself as a Microsoft technology consultant. I started off my career specializing in Microsoft SharePoint. So for a good part of my early career, that was my sole focus. I run some pretty large practices here in the UK, delivering SharePoint projects out to many customers. And from there, I would say my role transitioned into a more full stack Microsoft 365 role. So it wasn't just about SharePoint anymore. It was also about all of the capabilities that come with Microsoft 365. And I would say in more recent years, the last 5 or so, there's been more of an exclusive focus around Power Platform in my career. I set up my own consulting practice quite deliberately to focus on this exciting space. I could see the opportunity quite early on. And just over a year ago, it led me to found my new startup, Lowcodera, which I'm sure we'll be talking a bit more about today.
Awesome. You know, pretty much what I focus in the Microsoft space for the last 8 years as well. And yeah, definitely really keen to get into Lowcodera in a bit more detail. But before we do that, what if you could sort of explain to, I guess, a non-techie, but also feel free to explain to what we can say techies. First and foremost, what is Power Apps?
Right. Great question, and often one that gets overlooked. So Power Apps is part of a wider platform called the Power Platform, and it's brought to you by Microsoft. And essentially, it's a tool which allows non-technical people to build apps, and to be able to build those apps without the technical knowledge typically required by professional developers to build those apps. And it's all part of this low-code movement which we're beginning to see now across the world, where actually in recent years, as I'm sure you're aware, pretty much every company, no matter where they are or what they're doing, regardless of what industry they're in, is trying to better themselves by becoming more digitally enabled. And historically, there's always been this shortfall of professional development resource that has been available to meet this demand. And that's that sort of shortfall, as I'm sure you're aware, is none more so prevalent than right now. In fact, the stats show that over the next 3 years alone, there's 750 million apps which need to be built inside of organizations. And the vast majority of these are going to be built on these low-code platforms because there's just not enough professional developers to go around. And so the big tech companies have responded to this by bringing out these platforms which allow people without these traditional programming skills to go ahead and build these apps. And Power Apps is an example of one of these platforms which folks can use. And of course, I can tell you a lot more about kind of why Microsoft are effectively playing the lead role in this whole low-code space, and why Power Apps has really kind of caught fire and is probably now, in fact, it is by fact the most adopted low-code platform worldwide.
Interestingly enough, you mentioned that some of the big players in the space have started to shift their focus and assign resources to working in this space. What about the smaller companies? They also, of course, SMEs typically also have mobile apps as well.
Yeah.
Are they typically also able to work on the low-code platform? Are they using Power Apps?
100%. And again, this is one of the reasons why Microsoft are probably the most successful in this space is when you consider the last 20 or 30 years of investments, whether you're an enterprise customer or a small mid-size business, pretty much everyone has been using Microsoft Office, right? Excel, Word, whether you're a small company or big company, right? You've historically always made those investments. And we've seen in the last 8 to 9 years that shift to the cloud, where Microsoft 365 has come on board. And again, 70 to 80% of companies worldwide are on the Microsoft Office platform, and they've made that investment in Microsoft 365. And of course, as part of that ecosystem, you now get all of this capability, including Power Apps, included in that subscription. So the fact is, people have already bought the ticket, whether you're a small company or a big company, to the technology. Now the challenge is for all organizations, whether they're small or large, can they successfully adopt that technology? Do they understand what they can do with it? And these are some of the challenges which I'd love to talk about later, and some of the challenges which we help with regards to Lowcodera. But yes, absolutely, this is a platform which is equally adoptable, usable, whether you're a big company or a smaller mid-sized company.
And what would you say was the main driving force towards the move to low code?
So I would say it's a combination of things, market forces. The biggest one being that there is this huge deficit of professional developers. I mean, you'll know how long does it take for a professional developer to really gain the experience that's well before them studying, gaining qualifications, gaining a certain amount of experience in the right languages that you need to then become a successful developer. And there's just a huge shortfall in those types of resources being available to companies. And because of that, they're very pricey, and they're hard to get hold of. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the acceptance, pretty much universally, the fact that companies need to transform themselves, they need to become digitally enabled, or quite frankly, they're going to become obsolete very quickly unless they do those things. I would say those are the two primary reasons. And the low-code platforms are the means by which these companies can now accelerate their digital transformation journeys, because they don't necessarily need those expensive development resources. In a lot of cases, they can start doing stuff with their existing resources, whether those resources exist in sales departments, legal departments, marketing departments, finance departments. This is all about citizen developers now picking up these platforms and building these apps. And the advantage there is that, of course, these folks already understand their respective business processes. And where Microsoft have been really smart is that the traditional skills which these guys have, like Excel, is the same Excel formulas that are prevalent in Power Apps. And so if you know your way around Microsoft Excel and you can build these whizzy spreadsheets, you're almost halfway there to building Power Apps.
Might need to change my career. No, thanks for explaining. And look, just a couple more things from me. As someone who's well established within the Microsoft space, and someone who's really knowledgeable about Power Apps and the Power Platform, what would you say are typically some challenges that the industry is facing at the moment?
Yeah, no, great question, and I'm glad you've asked, because this is kind of the kind of lead into Lowcodera, if you like. So having been in this space now almost exclusively for the last 5 years, and worked with a number of different clients and organizations of all sizes, large enterprise customers globally to small to mid-sized companies across a range of industries. The great thing is, Power Apps has really accelerated how digital transformation is taking place. In fact, there's some research which shows that you can accelerate what you deliver by up to 140% with Power Platform, and I can testify to that. Compared to the approaches I was taking prior to 5 years of delivering projects to now, it's just a lot faster. Now, there is a flip side to this, and this is where the challenges come in. Although Power Apps and Power Platform is great, and you can deliver against these requirements which businesses have very quickly, the sort of downside is that sometimes the quality of what's delivered isn't really on par with what you might get from a professionally developed app using the traditional web development approaches. And with low-code technologies, and Power Apps is no different, the output out of the box, you can tell it's a Power App. So you have this saying, I love these Power Apps, but they look like Power Apps. And you can kind of see this kind of common look, and it's not just about a look, there are some functional deficiencies between what a low-code technology gives you versus a pro-code developed app. And as a result of that, not only do you get fairly primitive user experiences on these apps, you do often get certain scenarios and use cases which can't be fulfilled using these low-code technologies, which require a bit more sophistication, a bit more power behind it. And it's going to take time for these low-code technologies and Power Platform. They're getting better and better all the time with more capability, but to get to the level of where a professional developer can do whatever they want effectively, it's going to take some time. And that's where I set up the company about a year ago to look at addressing these challenges. Our motto is go better, go faster with what we're doing at Lowcodera. So yeah, those are some of the challenges which we see. There are some other challenges in that, although we're seeing 7.5 million active users per month, developers that is now picking up and building Power Apps, and we're seeing 20 million active users consuming these apps on Power Platform. There's still a huge way to go in terms of this being universally understood in organizations, that small, big and large. So we're still very much at the starting point with this, and although it's low code and it's designed to be less scary than pro code, there is still the vast majority of apps today are being built by IT and technical people, and we need to see that shift towards more citizen developers picking up and building these apps. And so I'm certainly expecting in the next 2 years a lot more folks to get involved, and we're obviously playing a huge part in that ourselves.
It's extremely interesting, and you touched on use cases earlier on. Could you give some examples of use cases within Power Apps or reasons businesses may adopt these technologies?
Yeah, no, cracking, and I think Microsoft are doing a great job in this space of promoting the different use cases, but effectively any sort of problems within an organization can be solved using a Power App. So if you're a marketing department, for example, that is involved in setting up events for your customers, whoever they may be, generally, you might have an Excel sheet with lots of prospects' names, a tracking process around that type of thing. Power Apps is a great tool to help you organize that information, turn it into an app so you can filter that list, search for your prospects, and then beyond that automate the process of inviting those users to the event, communicating with them, and that whole end-to-end cycle. If you're in a sales team, you need to manage your pipeline. You may be using third-party tools today, and those third-party tools are quite expensive, right? The licensing costs per user quickly rack up.
Yeah.
But if you've already invested and you've already got a Microsoft subscription, you've got a platform which is sitting there which can effectively do all of this for you. So, and the other advantage is that you can really tailor that sales pipeline process to your own business needs. And so if you're not happy with what your third-party products are, calling things, or you're not quite happy with, it maybe does 40% of what you want, but maybe the other half isn't there, you can quickly build out your sales process with all the integrations. And again, that's one plus points with the Microsoft ecosystem. You can integrate with all these third-party products as well and bring in the data using their APIs and things like that. So you can have this two-way communication. If you're a project manager, you need to manage your projects across many different programs. How do you track your projects effectively? How do you develop a process where when new projects come on board into your organization, how do you ensure you're capturing all of the information that you need to get that project off the ground in the way that you need? How do you ensure the stakeholders in your organization have visibility of everything they need to see regarding projects, whether it's how many you've got, how you're doing on the billing front, how much they're worth, and just tracking statuses and things like that. So it's effectively any business process that you have can be tweaked, can be bettered using Power Platform, and so we're seeing examples of pretty much every industry now coming forward, whether they're in the pharmaceutical industry, the automotive. I've even seen use cases at airports, apps which really optimize internal processes at airports. We've got London buses, Stagecoach using Power Apps, and so there are so many use cases.
And just two more short questions from my side before we find out a bit more about Lowcodera. For someone who is a software developer or has little to no experience or knowledge within the Power Apps or Power Platform community, what advice would you give to them in terms of maybe making a transition if they wanted to step up and become a Power Apps or Power Platform developer?
Yep, great question. And actually, there can be this fear sometimes that I'm a professional developer, I've got these skills, and now we've got all these low-code guys and low-code technology platforms coming on board. Where does that leave me as a professional developer? Am I going to become extinct? Am I going to be overtaken by these guys? These are some of the conversations I've had in recent years. But again, Microsoft have got a great story around this, right? And this is one of the reasons why Microsoft are the most successful low-code platform. It's because the Power Platform is for everybody. Whether you're a citizen developer that's never built apps or got any programming experience before, you can pick it up and start building apps. But the great thing is, if you're a professional developer, right, you can use your existing skills to actually do even more in this low-code platform. And Microsoft call this Fusion development, where you have effectively people business people in departments coming together now with professional developers and collaborating on projects like never before. So you're utilizing everybody's skills on these projects. And as we go on to show with what we've done with Lowcodera, we've basically brought in professional developers into what we're doing to augment the capability that you get in the low-code platform. And so by these blended skill sets on projects now, you're able to do far more than you could do ever before. So to answer your question directly, although it's low-code, if you unpeel it, there is a heck of a lot going on in that platform, which professional developers will recognize, and they can get involved in any part of that journey, if you like, whether it's them building apps directly or extending those apps using their professional development skills. There's a role to play in that platform.
And just lastly, where do you see this movement to low code going in the future, within the next sort of 2 to 5 years?
So it's only going one way. The stats are skyrocketing in terms of people coming into it. I personally know several people that have made career changes, like accountants, legal people. They got the bug. They started building a couple of apps, and not before long they were transitioning their careers into full-scale Power Apps developers. There's also a huge pathway which people are already starting to take from existing technologies. I'm a SharePoint guy by background, and I think if you look at LinkedIn stats, I think there's millions of guys with SharePoint skills out there. Right now, there's a very small percentage of those that have moved across to building Power Apps, but that month on month, we see those stats rising, because it's the natural evolution of where to go with their careers. So there's other reasons. AI, which is the flavor of the month at the moment, is fast being embedded into these platforms as well. And with that, you've got your data science folk and all these people coming on board, because it's not just about kind of crunching the numbers or getting insight through AI. People still want to see application experiences around all of this as well. And so we're expecting to see even more growth. And as I said earlier on, there's 750 million apps which are going to be built over the next 3 years. Who's going to build these apps is the question.
Well, thanks for taking the time to answer all of my questions, Rahan. I'm really excited to now sort of hand over to you and let you introduce what you've created over at Lowcodera.
Amazing. Thanks, Hashim. Yeah, very excited to tell you and your audience more about Lowcodera. It's one of these products actually which is better demoed than talked about, and in the interest of time, I'm going to share my screen, and then as we walk through it, we'll talk about it as well. So awesome. Right, so we just landed on the Lowcodera website, and we would class ourselves as a platform which allows folks to take Power Apps even further. Some of our customers like to call it Power Apps on steroids, effectively. So we talked earlier on about some of the challenges in the user experiences around Power Apps. Although they're great, you can build these things very quickly, they don't really look very good, and in comparable terms you can kind of tell the difference between a low-code Power App versus something that a professional developer has built. So we set about at Lowcodera addressing that challenge, so that ultimately there wasn't this sort of deficiency in output. And that's what we primarily do. We allow people to take Power Apps to that next level through Lowcodera. So I'm going to demo some use cases which really showcases the power of Power Apps, and hopefully for some of your audience they'll immediately recognize the sort of gap which we're plugging with Lowcodera. And so what I'm launching at the moment is our demonstration app for Lowcodera. We call it Test Drive. And within this is a bunch of power apps, which really showcase the value proposition around Lowcodera. And what we've started to do increasingly is demonstrate what Lowcodera is about in the context of certain mainstream use cases. So the ones we're going to be talking about today are related to project management, product development, strategy and planning, and maybe if we've got time, I'll show you an example for sales as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight into the project management use case and showcase an example of an app which was built using Lowcodera on powerapps. And for those of your audience that aren't familiar with powerapps, and perhaps I should have started there, if they do just a couple of minutes of Googling, they will quickly see that powerapps don't really look like what you see here out of the box. They're kind of very primitive in their look and feel. And what we do is we really light up power apps and what you can do. So in this use case here, which is an example of a risk management app, which allows organizations to track and plot their risks across different departments, they're able to come in and see this dashboard view of what these risks look like. And we've got these visualizations. And so at the heart of Lowcodera, what we've effectively done is we've expanded the tool set that you get to build your apps with. So what Microsoft give you out of the box is a bunch of these Lego pieces to build your apps with. We've augmented that with about 25 of our really advanced premium Lego pieces, which we call components. And together with what Microsoft give you, you can effectively fundamentally change what you can deliver inside of a Power App, because suddenly a Power App becomes more usable and more powerful with what we can give you. So all of this advanced analytical capability isn't there by default. We make that possible. And often, people are very familiar with Excel-based processes, and again, one of the limitations of Power Apps today is that you don't really get that nice sort of Excel-like editing experience for your data. And again, using our components, you can see here I'm able to do this integrated filtering, this sort of dragging and dropping of things in columns and all this kind of stuff. And fundamentally what it means is that when you're using Lowcodera to build your Power App, your people at the end of it don't even know this is a Power App. And that's one of the things people say after a little while, I love Power Apps, but it looks like Power Apps and it behaves like Power Apps. Can we do more? And this gets you past that. But the other key benefit is that Lowcodera rapidly accelerates your ability to build the apps as well. So although Power Apps and Lowcode is designed to build your apps faster, the reality is it's not always the case, because there's a lot to still take care of in terms of designing the user experience, making it as functional as you need to be. And through our ecosystem of components, we make that journey a lot quicker. And so typically we allow apps to be built up to 40% faster. But it's not just about velocity, it's also about quality. As you can see here, we fundamentally allow you to build a better app which is of higher quality than what you would otherwise get. And I was just demonstrating the interactivity there for inputting information. And one of the most powerful USPs that we have with Lowcodera in the context of a Power App and Power Platform in general is that, today, typically Power Apps is being used for building forms which end users fill in to capture information. When you want to visualize that information, Power BI is the place to go to. And Power BI is amazing. 98% of F500 are already using Power BI today, so it's universally adopted. However, it's It's extremely expensive in terms of licensing, particularly for small to mid-size organizations. And the other thing which we get feedback around is that, hang on, I've got a user in a Power App and I'm filling in a form, and to then visualize and see the analytics, I have to click on a link and then go somewhere else to consume a dashboard. And that creates a break in the user experience often, and people get confused with that. Now, although there's ways of integrating that analytics into Power Apps today, it's very limited and the experience isn't so great. So one of the things we're doing at Lowcodera is bringing it all together. So I just showed you an example of a form a second ago, and now I'm visualizing that data in a Power App, which you can't otherwise do. So here's a roadmap. But the great thing here is that I am actually now both visualizing the data and changing the data within the same user experience. And this is an exclusive for us. So I'm just changing that data. Typically today, you're changing the data in Power Apps, and then you have to see it somewhere else in Power BI. With this, you can do all of it in one space, and that really streamlines a business process. And I'll show you some more examples of where that's prevalent. But that's at the heart of us doing more in terms of the Power Apps which are built with Lowcodera. So let's take this next example where we have and this is quite common. Most organizations these days are overloaded with projects, and those projects need to be prioritized as part of the sort of portfolio management side of it. And again, this is a process which is done in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways today, where in this example here, each card represents a project. And what we're able to do here is create an experience where, together with stakeholders, by dragging and dropping, again, this isn't available in Power Apps today, stakeholders can come together and decide, actually, this is a project, if I drag it into the top left, which is urgent and important, and if I drag it into the bottom right, we can say this is a project which can be eliminated from our portfolio. And this may seem very kind of simple, but actually this just isn't possible to build it type of use case in a Power App today, and which is why people are using third-party tools like Grow or other brainstorming apps which you see on the internet to undertake this type of activity. What we're saying to folks is, actually, you can do this in the Power App and Power Platform now. So come back, you don't become Microsoft aligned. The data is all secure here in the Power Platform, so come and do it here. And what's great again here is that it's not just a case of dragging around some cards, which is pretty cool. We also allow the people building these apps and experiences to do more than they otherwise could do. So this concept of the right click, which allows you to do more around the project, maybe edit some information around it, highlight it like I've just done there. So what I'd like to do is just take you into another demo now, which builds on the first one, to illustrate that point around how we really make these Power Apps, next level Power Apps as we like to call them. So in this example here, we've got, like many organizations these days, they need to juggle with a number of different projects, of course. And on this example here, each card that you see on the screen is representing a project. And what stakeholders are able to do interactively is jump on and drag these projects around. And if I'm dragging to the top left, we're saying this is an example of a project which is urgent and important. And if I'm dragging to the bottom right, this is a project which can be eliminated from the project portfolio. And today, this concept of project or portfolio prioritization is definitely not done in Power Apps at the moment, because it doesn't really provide this effective way of doing it. So people are using third-party tools to undertake this activity. So we make all of this possible in a really nice and elegant way, which Power Apps out of the box doesn't allow for. But we also allow the person building the app to go a step further. So in this example here, what other options might be useful to present in the context of a project, whether that's highlighting it, adding some more information about it, we can do that. But equally important is this use case, is being able to drill through to a dashboard about that project. And again, the USP here is that you're not leaving the context of the app, you're not going somewhere else, it's all here in that app, and you can have all of this native data visualization capability wrapped into the app pretty nicely. So again, that's a real demonstration of a Power App which is taken to the next level. And we've got many more examples. So just in the interest of time, maybe do one or two more to give the audience an idea of what's possible. Pretty much every organization deals with tasks. And again, this is an example of a task management app, which is quite nice because on the homepage, you're able to see some dashboarding, some heat maps, which show you the criticality and priority of your tasks. So you know what you're dealing with, any overdue tasks. And again, what Lowcodera is great at doing is being able to provide the user and the people building the apps with lots of different neat features which are otherwise not possible. So whether it's the grid view here with its integrated filtering or drag and drop column prioritization, all of this isn't really possible today inside of Power Apps. Another neat time-saving one, which again isn't really possible. People are very used to in Excel being able to drag down and copy values into the cells below. Not possible today in Power Apps. I've just done it there. So all of these sort of subtle things which people take for granted in traditional web apps and common experiences which people are using today. Unfortunately, these things aren't all possible in Power Apps, and so we're plugging quite a lot of gaps, but collectively, once you bring all those things together, you end up with something far more powerful. So one of the examples I actually like demonstrating, again, because it's a end-to-end use case, a lot of folks are following agile methodologies in delivering their projects today. And for those familiar with agile, one of the core concepts is being able to manage your product backlog of requirements, your features and things like that as you're working. And again, in this example here, we've got a use case where every card represents an item on a feature backlog, so multi-device synchronization. And in this use case here, what we're able to do is users make decisions on, actually, is this a feature which we think is going to be used by all of the users? And if I'm dragging it into the top right, we are saying, yep, it's going to be used by all of the users most of the time. If I'm dragging it into the bottom left, we're saying this is a feature that's not going to be used by hardly anyone, none of the time. So it's about number of users versus frequency. And what this app goes on to do is those same features are being classified in different ways. So if I'm dragging into the top right, I'm saying this is an example of a product feature which is going to be very little effort to build, but it's going to yield a very high reward for building that feature. Whereas again, in the bottom left, we're saying this is an example of a feature which is very high effort to build, but actually isn't going to give us any reward. And what's happening in this app is that every time people are moving these cards into their respective zones, we are generating in real time the prioritization based on scores. And so the higher the score, depending on its position, we've now just automated that process of prioritizing your backlog. So as a team, you now know which features you should be focused on building first versus later. And so it's a great way of streamlining an end-to-end process, making it fun, capturing all of the data all in one user experience. Does that make sense, Hashim?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. We'll just do one more. In the interest of time, we'll skip ahead to the sales scenario. And in this one, let's show an example of a mobile app experience. And again, this is just an arbitrary sales dashboard, but presented in a mobile view, so it's not widescreen like before. And again, This is just to demonstrate the point around all of the analytics, the integrated graphics, being able to filter. All of this capability is unique to Lowcodera. And so this is all about being able to take your Power Apps to another level very quickly. So appreciate that was a bit rushed, but hopefully that gave you and your viewers a bit of a flavor around kind of what's possible with Lowcodera.
Absolutely. Thanks for presenting, and it was certainly interesting. Again, I do have a few questions. Who's actually the target customer for Lowcodera?
Great question. So as per our earlier conversation, we have people organizations of all sizes and shapes using Power Apps today. And so, yeah, the target market is anyone that is thinking about building Power Apps in the organization. So whether that's an F500 company looking to better the Power Apps, the standard of the Power Apps that they're building today, Lowcodera is for them. If you're a small organization, again, looking to even take your first steps in Power Apps, we make Power Apps faster, better. And just on that point, it's not just about these toolkits or components which allow people that are building apps to make them faster. Increasingly, we're offering ready-made plug-and-play apps which are ready to go, and so aligned already to various use cases. So if you want something plug and play, ready to go, or if you want to build the best Power Apps in the world, come to us.
Lovely. And where are you looking to go next? What's the future looking like for you?
Yeah, so I alluded to it there. What we're finding is that there's an irony to this, in that there hasn't been enough professional developers, .NET developers, or whatever language to go around and service all this demand. And because we're seeing this surge in low-code and Power Apps now, the irony is that actually there's not enough Power Apps resources to go around. And this is a shout out to you for recently helping me acquire some resources for my projects. I was really struggling, actually. We're seeing huge growth in what we're doing, but we still need resources to service our clients. And so getting resources is hard. People actually don't have time or resources to build an app. So increasingly we are building ready-made apps, which we're making available as templates to customers, and we're also building apps using our technology for customers as well. That's where we're going.
Amazing. Look, I'm really excited to see the journey that you're going on. I'm sure it's going to be extremely successful. The website looks absolutely great, by the way. And look, from my side, I think it's great to hear and sort of see that Power App is leading the way, and it's awesome that it's both for citizen and low-code developers. I think that's a very underrated opportunity that this provides. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure, of course, continuing our collaboration. Of course, in the future, when there's some growth, please feel free to reach back out to me.
Absolutely. I just want to say, it's been great doing this session today and collaborating with you recently. I mean, for anyone watching this, whether it's .NET developers or anything related to the Microsoft stack, and increasingly now Power Platform, Hash has been tremendously helpful in helping us grow and take those next steps. It's very hard to find good resources in this space because everyone's after them. So yeah, really looking forward to continuing our collaboration.